Thank you for staying with us. South Africans continue to enjoy uninterrupted electricity supply due to low demand during the festive season. Loadshedding is likely to return when big industries resume operations early next year as government races against time to bring renewables online. Former Eskom Executive Manager, that's Vally Padayachee, joins us in studio for more. Vally, a pleasure to have you in studio to speak more about, I guess, the state of Eskom and also the country's intervention when it comes to renewables as well. I will make this disclaimer that you, of course, don't speak on behalf of Eskom, and I'm not sure if you even tweet, but if you were to sum it up or summarize the state of Eskom right now, how would you describe it?
Good afternoon and season's greetings to you, Slatla, and to the listeners. And let's hope 2024
will be a good year.
Is a better year for all of us for various reasons, and thank you for inviting me again. Yeah, I think a quick response to your question is that, and if I could talk from the Eskom generation side, I think the leadership of Eskom generation, the Eskom generation team, let alone the rest of Eskom, and as assisted or with input from the ministry, are doing, let's call it reasonably well, in fact quite well, under the very challenging and difficult circumstances. In other words, they're doing their best with a limited deck of cards that have been delivered to them, and they're doing more with less. But having said that, and the Minister of Electricity had alluded to a number of those initiatives in his last address or briefing last week. But by his own admission, and from my experience, if I can sum it up as you requested, the grid from a technical point of view is still unreliable, and it's still technically performing erratically, and that we see it by the different stages of load shedding as we go along. And so given that, in my opinion, there are some key risks to the performance of the grid going forward, and included in that there are some existential risk which we are not careful about. We could get to a worse-off situation, and for me there's about 4 of those, and I can talk about those if you so desire.
Let's get into that, because I think it's also important for the layman or South Africans in general to understand some of the problems plaguing Eskom. Let's highlight some of the biggest challenges from what you've noted.
Okay, so let me, I'll try and keep it as simple as possible, because from a layman perspective. So I mentioned to you, in my opinion, there are 4 potentially key existential risks. The first one, which has been talked about significantly, is the energy availability factor. So at a very high level, we are currently sitting at plus or minus 55%, and we need to be at around about 70-75% to be out of the woods and to stop load shedding, let alone getting down to lower levels. So the existential risk of that is that if in the unlikely event, and I think I'm quite safe in saying that, in the unlikely event, if we plummet the EAF factor to far below 55%, then we could collapse the grid and get. So I'm saying that it's unlikely given the effort that's been put in. Okay, so there has to be, which is happening, key initiatives to up the EAF, and that's not going to be easy in the next couple of years. The second existential risk is which has reared its head off recently, is the national grid is severely constrained, right? Meaning the national transmission grid, and I would also argue the national distribution grid, for various reasons. Mainly, it's constrained, and the distribution grid, especially on the Munich side, needs to be strengthened and so on. Let me elaborate on that a bit further. Why I say it's constrained is that if you look at the Northern Cape, where we have the best sunny radiation in the world,
right,
the grid is severely constrained, so we can't take on any more electrons. Yet in Mpumalanga, where we have significant grid capacity, it's not the good spot for renewables, right? So at the moment, even with all the new or potential new projects that come onto the grid, which is plus or minus 9 gigs to 10 gigawatts,
yeah,
we unfortunately will not be able to take it on the grid and evacuate it. So in very simple language, Stantla, we have, and I've coined this term, it's called a energy constipated grid, okay?
Yeah,
and I'll talk about that a bit further. So we need, for example, and I'll give you a quick example as to what we need to do. We obviously need to put in new lines, new transmission lines, but that comes at a huge cost. We're talking about 200 billion rand to 300 billion rand roughly for about 14,000 kilometers of line. The fiscus, the national government, doesn't have that money. South African investment climate is not favorable, so the private sector has to play a role, but that's big money, right? So what we need to do quickly to finish that point about is that we need to look at technologies in the short to immediate term that could assist in squeezing out additional electrons from the current grid.
right,
Okay? And that we're looking at incentivizing IPPs to put in backup battery storage or backup ancillary services, or, which is not the best case, is to look at curtailing existing renewable projects. And just two more points, and I'll finish off
sure,
why is that as the Minister has alluded to, and Eskom, which is noble, Eskom is now embarked on a significant planned maintenance program. In fact, the last figure quoted is about 8,000 megawatts. So they've taken out 8,000 megawatts consciously to do planned maintenance, meaning what we call technically those units that have got partial load losses, which decreases the performance. They've taken out those units, about 8,000 megawatts, to maintain them, which is good because that's proactive maintenance. But what I fear, Slantla, I'll repeat, fear, is that when you take off 8,000 megawatts out of a grid that's significantly constrained,
right,
where we're load shedding, if the maintenance is not done properly. Now, the maintenance crew, whether it's internal or external, are also under pressure. So whenever they get a unit to maintain, whether through forced outage or through planned maintenance, they're also under pressure to return that unit back on the grid ASAP as priority. System control will be putting pressure. Our maintenance crews are human beings,
yeah,
so they're prone to make errors when you're under pressure. So my fear is that if you put back units into service which are not maintained properly, then you could be putting back units which are at a higher risk of failing than when you took them out. Now, what I'm suggesting then, I made this recommendation before, is that Eskom, and probably they're doing it, should emulate the maintenance philosophy of the aircraft industry,
okay,
protect aspects of it. When an aircraft is about to take off, when you and I are sitting on that aircraft, there's people that are walking around that plane. You see them walking around.
Inspecting.
It's a team of highly skilled inspectors, technical people, who are checking against some critical indicators, right, that it performs against those indicators, so much so that they have a high degree of confidence, virtually at 100%, that plane will take off successfully and make that flight successfully. And this is done for every flight. So even if there's 4 flights a day, that same routine goes. And before the pilot takes off, he gets a signed checklist by one single person, a highly competent person that says, Mr. Pilot, you are now clear to take off. Or he says, you can't take off, and the pilot can't take off. So what I'm suggesting is that I'm not saying that Our current maintenance crew may not be doing that, but they should be doing that. So that's a suggestion. And my final point, Slanta, on this matter of existential risk is that, and I'm talking very technically here, but critical, the coal-fired fleets, there's about 84 of them, right, of the 14 stations, performing against a key metric or critic measurement called the thermal efficiency. Basically, it means how efficient is the unit performing. If it's performing at its highest efficiency, then whatever energy you put in, whatever coal you burnt, you extract the maximum efficiency through the process of that conversion process in the boiler or furnace. When the thermal efficiency is performing at its sub-mediocre level, which is at a lower level because of age and improper maintenance, then what it means is that you're putting in your energy, you're burning coal, but you're not getting off the desired or expected megawatts. Hence, I make the term, that unit would be termed a energy constipated unit. So you're putting enough stuff, and then to get rid of that is you need to, what we call, in simple terms, the common layman, introduce a fusigated. You know fusic? Because of constipation? I'm saying you introduce a fusigated approach, a technology or methodology so that you increase the thermal efficiencies and you get more megawatts, because we need every megawatt now. I know I've been a lot technical, but I try to keep it as simple as possible.
So, Vally, unfortunately, we are running out of time. But before I let you go, there's this big debate on whether why South Africa moving away from coal-fired generating capacity. We see this through the decommissioning of some power plants, and whether renewables are the answer to the country's energy crisis. What's your take?
Let me, in the interest of time, let me make a statement. You know, South Africa is committed to a net zero and a just energy transition. I am of the opinion, and I made it very clear on media, etc., that we should be moving towards a prudent, cost-effective, fit-for-purpose, balanced, just energy transition. Meaning that you cannot solve the crisis only with renewables on the grid. You need what we call dispatchable technologies. We need clean coal, we need gas, we need hydro, and we need nuclear. Now, people don't realize, in fact, the renewable pundits will say that you can solve this crisis by flooding the grid with renewables. But a renewable electron, green electron, is not the same as a dispatchable or a coal or a gas or a nuclear electron, because you've got to first make the green or renewable electron dispatchable. Right? By dispatchable, I mean when you press the button, press the switch on, you get lights. With a renewable one, you can't do that because the sun doesn't shine continuously. So to make it dispatchable, you incur some extra cost. So my take, to get back to your point, is that South Africa needs a mix of technologies, which includes balanced technologies, which includes non-dispatchable, renewable technologies, as well as clean coal, gas, hydro, and so on, especially in this crisis situation. And Eskom has taken an excellent decision where they've decided, the board has decided, from what I've read in the media, etc., to extend the life of the existing coal-fired stations as best as they can until this crisis situation is over. We've got to squeeze out every electron, every megawatt from the existing fleet. You cannot, like what happened in Komati. You replace 1,000 megawatts of electricity, dispatchable electrons, with 100 or 140 renewable electrons in a crisis situation. It just doesn't make sense.
Vally, I wish we had more time for this discussion, but unfortunately we have run out as we conclude our discussion with Vally Padayachee, who's a former executive manager at Eskom. His insights have really shared a valuable perspective on the potential reprieve from load shedding in South Africa, and also the prospect of ending load shedding by the end of 2024. I mean, it is an optimistic outlook that holds significant implications for the country's economic growth and stability.